Tegan and Sarah, welcome to E-Town.
Thank you.
So glad you guys can make this work. You could make this stop happen in the midst of your busy tour.
Oh yeah.
It's our pleasure. Thanks for having us.
This place is a little smaller than what you've been used to lately.
It's true, but we spent a lot of years playing really small places, so it feels like home. It's, you know, it's all about the crowd, and if it's 10 people or if it's 10,000 people, it's all about the attitude. These people are all smiling, so I'm in. They're all very well dressed and happy. I see some Tegan and Sarah shirts, so we're feeling good.
Among friends.
Yes.
But, you know, thinking about Lollapalooza or sitting in with Taylor Swift at the Staples Center or some of these gigantic shows, you must have been, you know, sort of getting used to this whole other thing. It's been a long time since you were playing little rooms.
You know, we always thought that to be versatile and be able to, you know, fill an arena or an amphitheater or to fill a club, you know, you need a lot of different skill sets. And I think one of the things I'm most proud of with our project is that we can sort of scale up or scale down. You know, at the heart, I know that what a lot of people are there to see is our personalities and our songs, and you know, and I think we've become fairly good at knowing how to manage, you know, whatever space or opportunity we're in. Yeah.
You also have to dress differently, probably.
Sometimes. I mean, I always try to dress my best. Except for the 90s and 2000 to 2004. I'm not sure what was going on there.
We look good for the times. It's just you can't look back. You know how this is. I'm sure you do the same thing. You look back and you're like, what was I thinking? But it was cool then. I assure you, mullets and asymmetrical haircuts were like totally in.
I was part of that fabulous trend.
Right? I want to see pictures.
But you know, I don't frullet. I have the afro and the mullet.
I love that phrase.
But we digress. And of course on radio, you know, everybody knows you look great.
Exactly, yeah, that's super important.
Was there words, you know, between the Ellen show or all the TV things or all this stuff, were there any moments where you just went, oh my God, are we really here? Is this really happening to us? Or is it all just sort of natural trajectory?
Oh my God, we were 18 years old and, you know, we had a full coffee shop in front of us. We were like, we've made it. If anything, I wonder if it's taken so long to get where we're at right now because we were constantly happy and satisfied with what we had. But there was always this ambition brewing underneath, and as we hit our mid-20s, that wave started to crest, and we realized that that ambition wasn't necessarily about fame and fortune, it was about reaching people, and we saw this impact our music was having on people's lives, and not to get super, like, you know, like...
This would be the place.
Right, okay. Well, I know, I don't want to in any way appear self-indulgent, but we did see that there was a significant effect on a lot of the people who listened to our music, and so our ambition was like in direct competition with this part of us that, you know, I want to have a normal life and I want to be a normal person, but then there was this part of me that was like, is the purpose of this music and this career to help people, reach people, entertain people on a grand, major scale? And all of a sudden, that I answered that question, I checked the yes box, and all of a sudden it just started to get really big. So yes, to answer your question directly, when we got to Ellen, I was absolutely like, we're at the Ellen show, we made it! But I do that like 100 times a day, you know. People recognize us on an airplane, and inside I'm like, we've made it. It's constant, it doesn't take a lot, you know. Ellen or someone just recognizing me in a movie theater bathroom, it's all the same. It's pretty cool.
Well, maybe it's a Canadian thing.
Yeah, maybe.
Just
Lower expectations.
I think that's New Jersey. But my wife is convinced that every Canadian is just spectacular, smart, funny, talented, well-mannered, obviously, you know, well-dressed and put together and so on. And it's really silly, but it did start with, you know, it's been a constant cavalcade. It started with, you know, Bruce Cockburn or the Barenaked Ladies, and then it was Jan Arden, and then it was, you know, Kathleen Edwards, and it was Feist, and it was Dallas Green. You know, everybody's like, they're so nice. They're so nice.
Yeah.
This is true. I mean, we
It's really not true.
A lot of them are.
I think the one thing that's interesting is I think that people who are drawn to the profession that we're in, and you know, maybe I would lump in like certain actors or certain radio personalities, writers, that sort of thing. You know, in the arts in general, I do feel that there is a high percentage of nice, funny, smart Canadians, which is not to say that we did not have the experience of meeting unfriendly Canadians growing up. There was a number of them who bullied us in middle school that probably I would not put in the list of people who are nice and friendly and funny. But I think that the people who are naturally drawn to these these art forms or this business from Canada. You know, we have a lot of support by the Canadian government.
Right.
You know, there's a focus really early on sort of nurturing and celebrating and acknowledging Canadian talent. And so I think maybe it's
Maybe it's
that.
not as cutthroat, so we're nicer when we get to the top.
There's not that many of you.
That's right.
There's
We
room
have to
for-
stick
there's room for
together.
everyone.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
That's how they hand out grants there. It does feel like it's never ending. So.
It is really wonderful. That's the only way I can explain it, because obviously there are not great, some Canadians are not awesome, but I do.
Only a Canadian would say that. Like, we're like, we basically want to tell you that all Canadians are great, but then we feel the need to remind you there may be a few that aren't great. Just cover our bases.
Well, they have the job of sort of conditioning you and hardening you so that when success comes, you're ready. So they're providing a very Canadian purpose, too.
I wonder if also Canada doesn't have patience for that sort of behavior. You know, we don't necessarily have the Hollywood culture or the fame structure that maybe America does. So I think if you get famous and you misbehave, Canadians will scold you. They hold you to a higher standard. You represent them worldwide, and they expect that.
Let me just say one thing.
I know what you're going to say.
Hockey.
Right. But when you compare hockey to, like, you know, UFC or something like that, it seems tame.
Okay. You digress.
I thought you were going to actually bring up Justin Bieber.
Well, that's just an anomaly. Every culture has one.
We do feel that.
Or Justin Bieber's monkey.
I feel like at some point though, Justin Bieber will. I mean, we grew up in a home which I think is probably fairly.
That's confusing. You're making it seem like we grew up in a home for children or something.
We grew up in it was kind of like that a little bit, but we grew up in a home where humility was praised. You know, I think that the idea of confidence has been sort of distorted. You know, and is sometimes. I think that like overconfidence or arrogance, you
So
know.
hubris and arrogance, you don't get the gold star for that.
And I think that I think it's important to make that distinction. You know, we were raised to have self-esteem and to have, you know, a high self-worth, but we were also praised for being humble and for being kind and for being, you know, listening to our parents.
That sounds really Canadian.
Yeah. And our front door was always unlocked.
All right. I do want to talk just a little bit about growing up, because I'm imagining, so your mother had you guys when she was relatively young, 22, went to university with you guys in tow. I don't know if you remember any of her educational years, I suspect not.
Well, we do, yeah. Well, because it was actually when we were 7, so we do have some memories of her first going back to school, yeah.
And then in the house, in your home when you were growing up, I know that I was a little confused because I imagined this sort of pop music at the time. You know, Phil Collins I know was important in one way or another.
Sure.
But also I heard that Patsy Cline was part of that mix too. So is that sort of the bookends of what you were listening to?
I think so. I mean, certainly there was what we were listening to at my parents' and then what we were listening to at my grandparents'. So my grandparents were Patsy Cline and Hank Williams and like old country, Roy Orbison. So we were very familiar with that music, but I don't know that we were able to like, I don't think that we were delineating between, like, I don't think I knew that Patsy Cline would be a weird thing to associate with, like, Phil Collins. Like, I would have been like, hey guys, have you heard, you know, Paula Abdul? And also, have you heard this Patsy Cline track? Like, I think we mixed the music we were listening to.
I think that's really healthy and natural and good. So
Yeah.
I think it was, well, it helped, I think, build also our self-esteem, because kids would come over and they'd be talking all about the same bands, and then we would put on Supertramp, you know, and it was like we were superstars for, you know, introducing them to new music.
Our parents seemed super cool too, because kids like music, but it's not that often that parents are super entrenched in the culture. And our stepdad was a super fan. He loved Bruce Springsteen and U2. He had an extensive music collection, and so it was not uncommon if a kid came over to our house that my stepdad would be wearing like a Bruce Springsteen concert T-shirt, and we had pictures, giant oversized posters and artwork of bands and album covers. Like Born in the USA was hanging in the front entryway of our house in middle school. That's true. And we thought that would happen in everybody's house. We'd go to people's houses and be like, what? Where's Bruce Springsteen?
that's pretty funny. It's pretty funny, especially in Canada. Who's older? Which one of you is older?
I'm older, Tegan. It's radio. It's radio, people.
No snake gags on the radio.
Right?
By 20 minutes?
8 minutes.
8 minutes?
Yeah. And I believe that, although my parents, they were young, sometimes their recollection